Hello everyone, it's your boy Sauce once again back to give you some Kesem 101 information. This is for Camp Kesem at St. Louis University for the 2019 camp year. Alright, I'm going to preface this with a brief announcement that I am not the one who made these PowerPoint slides. These come directly from CK Nationals, and whoever designed them put all of the words on the screen. So I may not talk too in depth. I'll just point out key points here and there. And it is your job to go and kind of read through the bulk of this so you're prepped for camp and the certification videos that follow this PowerPoint. But kind of just outlining what we're going to be doing. We will talk what is Camp Kesem, what is our mission here at Camp Kesem, what history does our chapter in particular have. That'll be pretty brief. What impact do we make on our demographic of campers? What are some of our operating principles, and what is the general kind of cohesive structure at camp? So, what is Camp Kesem? Here at SLU, we're a volunteer organization on campus that's headed by student leaders. We provide year-round support for children who have been affected by a parent's cancer, and this manifests itself in many ways. It can appear through our birthday cards that we send out, through bereavement support, our friends plus family days, where new prospective campers and returning campers alike are invited in to kind of interact with counselors in an outside of camp setting. And then finally we have Camp Kesem, which is the week of free summer camp that we provide for the children. So our history at CK nationally. Camp Kesem was originally founded at Stanford University in 2000. It was called, I think, the Camp Kesem Project, or Camp Project, and Kesem was like the keystone of it. So it's kind of grown since that time. It's been 19 years now since that. But there's been a huge growth plan, especially since the turn of this decade in 2011. And now we're serving 10 times the number of kids we were serving just 10 years ago. So, a little bit about the history of our chapter. We are 6 years old this year. This will be our 6th year at Camp Kesem. And interesting enough story, we actually had another year under our belt. However, we had difficulty getting some campers that year, so we were essentially shut down for a year, and then we came back after a brief gap here and have been running ever since. That's kind of unusual, so it's something unique to SLU, and we're fighting. We don't give up. So last year, 2018 camp, we had 104 camperinos. This year, we're excited to announce that we're at a new campsite from last year. Last year, we were at Sunny Hill, and the year before that, we were at Babbler. This year, we are at Camp Manitowoc in Southern Illinois in Benton, and we're expecting to have at least 125 campers. Below, you can see a picture of camp from last year. This was right after Messy Olympics. We had a fire truck come out and spray people down. And yeah. So it's important to remember that even though there may just be one person in the family who has cancer, cancer impacts the entire family. So how specifically does this impact the child? A big thing that you'll find with our campers is kind of the isolation they have outside of camp. Since not everyone's parent has cancer, not everybody understands exactly what that means and how it can feel. One of the key points at Kesem is that it's an environment where everyone is kind of bonded in the same capacity and can relate and interconnect. Children also can suffer low academic performance. Obviously, there's a lot of stress, worrying, and anxiety that kind of makes schoolwork feel trivial at the time. There can also be a loss of social interest, which is just common with such traumatic experiences, such as a parent's cancer diagnoses. And since some parents can kind of be out of commission of their daily roles, a lot of the children end up taking on responsibility at younger ages. Moving on. So we at Camp Kesem not only love that we can provide this difference for campers, but it's also an opportunity for you as college students to grow as leaders and volunteers. So at Kesem, volunteers are responsible, our executive board, which we call our coordinator board, recruits, trains other students. You probably recognize beans and asparagus in that capacity for this year. They're volunteer cords. We connect with family in needs. Our outreach coordinators, Yiffy, Tops, and Robin, take lead on that. We raise funds to support the chapter. That's our development chords, Brittle and Crush. And then plan and executive highly impactful camp experiences. Our operation coordinators, we've got 3 of them this year, Nugs, Onion, and Ritz, who have been planning camp this year and did a great deal of work on our reunions. And then delivering year-round support services. This kind of involves all of us, especially with outreach and our AMP coordinators, who are Cheerios and Cheerios and Sunny leading that. So people are kind of just drawn to our mission in general because it's a great way to make an impact on the community, and you can really see the change that you affect. Like even throughout the week, you'll notice campers growing in self-esteem and generally being more interested in behaving kind of like kids again. And especially here at SLU, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. That really kind of embraces the Jesuit mission as well as the Camp Kesem mission. So, Kesem is national, and so our chapter is just one of many. There's over 100 different Camp Kesem chapters throughout the nation, kind of all across. You can see the Midwest, densely populated, East Coast, West Coast, and then kind of just speckled here and there throughout the rest. So, like I said, we prepare students to go out into the world and affect change beyond even just Camp Kesem. So 95% of volunteers reported that Kesem had significant impact on their skill development, and 98% of our alumni intend to do philanthropic work after college. And even a great deal of people go on to work with Kesem in the future. For example, one of our previous alumni, Yuki, Mackenzie Sullivan, was a director here at SLU, and then she went on to become a program director, and now she's even higher up on that chain of command this year. So there's just some growth that we've been experiencing in the past. As you can see, it's almost exponential, and it just keeps increasing. So we try to support more and more children every year, and the way we can do this is through fundraising. Actually, at SLU, we do something called Kesem It Forward because we end up raising so much money. We feed that money back into the national organization, and that goes on to help establish more Camp Kesem chapters so that we can reach out into demographics in underserved populations and where Camp Kesem isn't already. So, what does your experience at Camp Kesem look like kind of at camp? Well, first we'll kind of talk about how nursing staff works at camp. So nurses attend the entire week of camp, as does every other volunteer, professional staff, and student volunteers included. Nurses just provide kind of basic medical care, and they're a good resource to use for injuries and maybe kind of just getting campers a better medical experience while there. They can kind of handle bigger issues as they arise, in that case for chain of command things. One big thing they do is they give out prescribed medication daily. So in the morning and like at night, essentially, we'll have bigger groups of campers that go for like morning meds or night meds, and that'll kind of fall into place. Additionally, the nurses will be at our general staff meetings, which kind of involve essentially everyone at camp. That's a student volunteer. All right, talking about hotline operator. So number one, this person keeps camp safe, and they ensure safety as an agent of Camp Kesem National by responding to and providing as needed support remotely for situations and incidents that occur at camp. So they serve as an on-call expert about all incident, situation, safety protocols as outlined in our handbook. So this person actually is not at camp. They're just kind of a resource for us to use to call like as we go up the chain of command with increasing severity of incidences, to talk and discuss things with and directions that we need to head as a camp as a whole. So now we're going to talk a little bit about admin team, which is what I will be a member of at camp this year. So sorry for the noise. My other admin team member, Maple, just almost wiped out on a cord in this room. But admin team kind of oversees general camp programming, And actually, with operations, that will be headed by Onion this year. He's going to be the head of the program counselors, who we've kind of made as our special ops for setting up and logistically running camp. As admin, we also work with the CAs. We have 2 of which this year, Bubba and Pop, our 3 nurses who are all alumni, Django, Moo, and then Shenanigans. And then our mental health professionals. We have one right now. Her name is Nicole Butterfly. And we will hopefully have the other 2 MHPs up soon. So those people are great resources for you for any situations that may involve maybe some mental kind of incidents that occur, physical incidences, or any other just tips and tricks you need to help make camp safe. So, aside from admin team, you have unit leaders who are kind of like the liaisons between the units and admin. They also kind of head off the units in order to... They're typically returning counselors who know how camp runs and can offer advice and kind of lead and take a more prominent role in that capacity. So they oversee a group of 10 to 12 campers of the same age, and several their group of cabin counselors. They just provide you with support throughout the week and evaluates your performance essentially at the end of the week, which the directors for next year will have access to, and as will next year's volunteer corps. So these unit leaders do stay in the cabin with campers, and they fulfill all cabin counselor responsibilities. They just have that kind of extra liaison capacity and leadership role. So let's talk a little bit about one of the most unique things for Camp Kesem, which is our empowerment days. So this year at camp, we'll be splitting our empowerment into 2 groups, a younger group and an older group, just because we are a rather large camp group this year, and it kind of gives us more time to focus on each individual camper. So at empowerment, everyone's in attendance, and this is the one opportunity like we specifically bring up cancer at camp. The children are allowed to talk as they feel like throughout the week, so don't stifle any behavior if cancer comes up outside of empowerment. It's just this is the one time that counselors and student leaders kind of intentionally bring this up. So it's an opportunity for the campers to share their story if they choose to. They don't have to, so please do not force them to talk if they do not want to talk. It's just important that we give them opportunities to share. Additionally, empowerment should be focused in a direction that isn't let's just share our stories and be melancholy about it. It's about using cancer as a thing that kind of binds us and something that we form a support group out of. It's not the cancer that defines us, it's the cancer that brings us together, and then we become a community. So there will be more on this empowerment training kind of later on, but I just wanted to touch upon that. Additionally, we have cabin chats, and you'll be split up by cabins. So professional staff are encouraged to ask unit leaders to attend cabin chats. So professional staff won't necessarily be at your cabin chat, but they are allowed. These are just opportunities for counselors and campers to kind of debrief the day, talk about how things are going and where they want to go. All right, so that ends our discussion on Kesem 101. Now I'm going to talk very briefly about another topic, which is kind of Cancer 101. So please forgive me a brief moment while I work on pulling this up. I will say in advance that this presentation was originally given by a nurse, Christina McGrowerty, who deals with more oncology matters. So I would like to remind you I am not a trained professional in this area yet, hopefully in the future. But that being said, let's get right into this. If you cannot tell, I do not know how to use computers that well. There we go, and it's up and running. So, that is not my name. So I'm informed that during this training at camp, Christina kind of used minions as a method to describe cancer to campers, and she essentially called cancer stupid minions. So, as to my understanding, this means that you have cells within the body who kind of aren't performing their functions. They're varying in their reproductive capacities from normal cells. They're dividing uncontrollably, and they may encroach upon non-cancerous tissue, invading that space and causing issues with that. You can have cancer is always also named from the place of origin. So if you had kidney cancer, it'd be kidney cancer even if that had spread to another region, say the blood. And so if cancer has spread, it's at that point called metastatic cancer. So kidney cancer that has reached into the blood would be metastatic kidney cancer rather than blood cancer or leukemia. So cancer is actually relatively common, unfortunately common in society. So in 2018, there was 1,735,350 new cases of cancer, and approximately 609,640 people will pass away from the disease during the year. So it is one of the leading causes of death worldwide. So most people have come into contact with cancer in the past, even if they haven't been directly affected. So in 2012, there were 14.1 million new cases and 8.2 million cancer-related deaths worldwide. So it kind of varies. You can see that at least since 2012, the rate of cancer has dropped. And even going on, you can see from 1991 to 2015, the overall cancer death rate in the United States has fallen by 26%. So medical advancements are moving us in a better direction with this overall, yet it's still a huge problem that pervades many aspects of society. And kind of what I was talking about, there's many, many different types of cancer, from breast cancer all the way to liver cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon and rectum cancer, and varieties of each. So an important thing to know about cancer is that there's no specific treatment that works for each and every cancer. Each cancer is kind of unique to the individual because it arises from damage within the DNA. So each cancer treatment plan is kind of specifically tailored and coordinated to the patient. But there are specific risk factors that do make you more susceptible to cancer. So smoking obviously has been talked about since the 60s with problems, and as you can see by smoking and tobacco warning labels, it obviously contributes to risk for cancer. E-cigs, they're still working on studies, but stay away from them. Diet obviously can affect, depending upon what you're putting in your body, like nitrates and more processed foods can increase your risk factors. And obesity, which is greatly increasing amongst younger children within the U.S., which is one of the obesity capitals of the world, can put you at higher risk for certain cancers. Your occupation, if you're surrounded by hazardous materials, or if you're performing long hours, stress can make you more susceptible to things. And then age. If you're living longer, that gives your cells more opportunities to make mistakes in your DNA proofreading abilities, which means there's a higher % chance that you will develop some sort of cancer. Additionally, exposure to carcinogens will greatly elevate your risk. Carcinogens are essentially cancer-causing chemicals and agents. So that kind of relates back to occupation. If you're surrounded by these carcinogens all the time from your occupation, you're obviously going to have a higher risk for cancer. So there's a few treatment modalities possible for this. So you have chemotherapy, which involves, which you can do chemo in a wide variety of ways. You can have things like chemo bombs where they specifically implant high dosages of chemo in specific areas, or you can have chemo that kind of pervades the whole body in an attempt to eradicate the cancer through targeting certain cells for destruction. It really just depends upon the individual patient and their diagnosis and prognosis. There's also surgery. The best way I can think of describing this would be with, say, brain cancer, where you'd have a neurosurgery where they attempt to resect a tumor. And while I'm on the topic of tumors, not all tumors are bad. There are things called benign tumors, which are not necessarily normal, but they're not as dangerous as cancer. They're completely healthy, kind of like clumps of cells that don't really interfere with life processes and don't necessarily warrant treatment and removal. You also have radiation therapy, which can be used to target certain locations and cells and hit them with high doses of radiation in an attempt to eradicate or reduce in size tumors and kind of just destroy cancer cells. So I know I did not do that PowerPoint justice as Christina would have, but hopefully that gives you a little bit better knowledge on what cancer is and how cancer comes to be and certain risk factors leading to cancer. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, your boy Sauce, or Maple, my co-director, or Volunteer Chords, Asparagus and Beans. And if we don't have an answer to the question right off the top of our heads, we do have resources like Christina who we can reach out to and get you more information on. So I hope that was informative for you, and have fun watching the rest of the trainings.